Nazir Daf continues the Gemara's discussion of the halachos of tuma of a mace, and we're going to focus on the halachos of rekev. That is, there's halacha Moshe Sinai, which says that although normally when something decomposes and turns to dirt, it loses whatever halachic status it had up until that point. That is not true about a mace. Even though it decomposes fully and turns to dirt, it is still matame. However, this halacha Moshe Sinai has certain very specific rules and restrictions, and this Gemara, the Daf, will be going through a number of those halachas and also ask a number of questions about halachas that are related that aren't clear necessarily. So the first halacha will be introduced by a brisa. The brisa introduces it by illustrating it, and the halacha is that it has to be that there's no other possible sources of the dirt that's here. It all has to be from the flesh of this mace. So the brisa says that there are two types of situations. One is a situation in which you know that the decomposed dirt you have in front of you is from the mace and nothing else. That is if the mace was buried where it is with no shrouds, no tachrichin. It was not in any type of wooden casket. It was on a stone surface, and it was the type of stone that will not disintegrate. There you know that it's all the dirt that you see there is from the mace, and there it is not mixed with anything else. That's a situation in which the rekev is tamei. If, however, it was buried in shrouds, or it was buried in a wooden casket, which rotted, or could have rotted, or it was buried on a surface made out of levanim, a type of rock that also disintegrates, there's no halacha of rekev, it's not matame, because the dirt of the mace is mixed with other sources of disintegrated material. Another Gemara has a question. Ula brings a shayla. Ula brings a halacha. That is, Ula says the halacha is that rekev is only matame if it has some in it of all three parts of the mace, that is flesh, bones, and sinews, gidim. You don't need to have the entire mace there. However, you have to have at least some of these three sources. So when Kasha Rava asks, there's a brisa that says that rekev which comes from flesh is not matame. That implies it's only flesh that's not matame, but a rekev that comes from bones is matame, even though there's no flesh there. Where it says no, that's not the correct diak. The correct diak is flesh is not matame, but flesh with bones is matame. Says the Gemara, but there's no gidim. Ula had said you have to have all three, bones, flesh, and gidim. So it says no, any situation in which you have bones and flesh is going to be gidim, because gidim are the ligaments that connect the bones to the muscle, and therefore if you have the bones and the muscle, you're going to have the gidim there as well. Next, the Gemara brings a halacha of Rav Shmuel bar Abba and Rav Yochanan. Says let's say you have two masim that were buried next to each other. Each one decomposes, and each one is foreign matter to the other one, and therefore each one is mixed in with the other one, and neither of them are tamei, even though they're both mace, because it's like having a foreign matter mixed in. So when I ask Sakasha, there's a brisa where Rav Nassan says that if you have a spoonful that is the minimum size, you have a ladleful of rekev that comes from two different mason, it's tamei. But you're telling me if it's mixed, it's not tamei. So my answer is we're talking about where they rotted separately. That's you had each mace was buried separately and it decomposed separately, and therefore its rekev had the halacha of tumah. Then parts of those two were mixed together, and now it fills a tarvat, it fills a ladle, which is the minimum size, and therefore it retains the status of tumah. It just comes together for the size. Next, Gemara brings halacha of Rabbi bar Chana named Rabbi Yochanan, talks about hair. So he says hair that was cut off the body counts as a foreign matter, and if it's put in the grave together with the body and it rots, the body won't be tamei any longer because it's a foreign thing that's with it. So where's the kasha on this? We have a brisa, we have a mishnah that says any part of a mace is tamei except for teeth, hair, and nails that are separated from the body. If they're still attached, then they are tamei. Now the Gemara has a shaila there. It says that Chizkiah asked that the Mishnah says Chizkiah asked that hair which is ready to be cut off, that is long and ready to be separated, what is the status of that hair? Do you say that it's as if it's cut off and therefore it is the status of being separate? Or do you say it's still attached and therefore has the status of being part of the body and it will not be considered a foreign matter mixed in? Versus why don't you resolve it from what Rabbi Barchana just said? He clearly said that's only hair which is cut off that's foreign, but not hair that's attached, even if it's long and it's ready to be cut. So Gemara says no, there's no proof from him. All he said was that if it's attached, it's definitely considered to be part of the body. If it's cut, it's definitely considered to be not part of the body. What'll be if it's so long that it's not ready to be cut? The only thing he specified was that if it's cut, it's not part of the body. If it's so long that it's ready to be cut, he didn't say anything about it, and it could be that he didn't mention it because he also has the shaila. We don't necessarily have any answer from him. Just because he didn't say it doesn't mean that he knew for sure that it's not considered to be. It could be that it is considered to be, and he didn't mention it because it wasn't clear. Okay, next the Gemara has a shaila. What is the halacha about the heel? The skin of the heel is dead, hardened skin. Does that therefore count as part of the mace when it rots, or does that count as a separate material because it's not living anyway during the life of the person? So therefore maybe it counts as foreign. So the Gemara says, let's bring a raya from a brisa of Rav Nosson bar Rabbi Oishia, who said that if you had rotted material that's mixed from two people together, it's tamei. And we said before that that's talking about the size. That means you could have the exact minimum size from two mason, even if you have only an exact moli tarvat, an exact ladleful, it's tamei. Now, if you say that the material that comes from the heel doesn't count as part of the mace because it was dead already while the person was alive, then how could you know for sure that you have an exact size? Maybe you have less than the size because some of it is from the heel. So the Gemara answers, you're right, but we're asking a different question over here. We're asking if it was just a leg that rotted, and therefore it might be part of the heel counts. But in Hanami, you're right that if you had an entire body that rotted, that would be a separate shaila, and you couldn't necessarily prove that from here. Another pshat on the Rishonim here wants to say maybe the pshat is that because the heel skin is there, it causes it to rot faster, and therefore it doesn't have the same general halacha as rot, as we said before. The Gemara now has a series of questions. The Gemara first asks, what is the status of a child in the womb of a woman? Does that count as a separate entity because it's going to come out at some point? Or does it count as part of the mother because you have a rule, uber yarach imo, the child, while it's still inside, is considered to be a limb of the mother. It's attached and growing from the body of the mother. Now, on the side that you'll say that it is going to come out at some point, what about shechvaz zera that's within the body that has not yet been fertilized or hasn't yet formed an embryo? So do you say it's going to come out at some point and it doesn't count? Probably not, because it's not even going to turn into a child necessarily. So maybe we therefore say it's considered to be part of the mother. Or perhaps since it's so early in the process and it came from a foreign source, it's considered to be foreign matter within her. Now, says the Gemara, once you discuss that, let's talk about food which is in a person's intestines. On topic of a woman, we'll talk about that which is within her intestines. Do you say that since she needs the food to live, it counts as part of the body? Or do you say that it comes from outside and therefore it's foreign matter and doesn't count at all? That was Rav Papa's shaila. Next, the Gemara asks Rav Acha Breder of Ika's shaila, what about oiroi? Rishonim discuss what oir means. Usually it means skin. So some Rishonim learn this refers to skin. Others understand it as being a type of saliva, just the wetness of the mouth. Rav Huna Bar Manayach asked, what about spit? What about mucus, that is the liquid in the mouth or in the nose? Do these things count? Are these things considered to be separate materials? So the Gemara says, Rav Shmuel Bar Acha said to Rav Papa, how is it possible that all these things would be considered to be foreign materials to take away the halacha of Rekav? Then how could you ever have the halacha of Rekav? Every person that dies has hair and has saliva and has skin and has food. What do you do with all these things? So the Gemara says, no, maybe not. Maybe the only situation in which you could have Rekav is a very rare case where before the person had died, you fed them special water that removes everything from their intestinal organs, clears out the zera and the food, and you also coated their skin with a special potion that removes all hair, and then you boil the body in the hot water of the Tiberia hot springs, which actually removes the skin, and therefore there's no skin any longer. It's possible to be a situation where you wouldn't have any of these things. Next, the Gemara brings Halach of Abaye. Abaye says that the disintegration has to happen naturally. If the mace is ground into small pieces before it disintegrates, then there is nothing, it wasn't disintegrated by natural action, it was disintegrated by being ground. That does not count, and therefore there's no din of rekev. Says the Gemara, what if it later gets ground up? Do you say that the problem is you needed to have flesh, gidim, and the bones, and you have those things? Or do we mean that it has to be in its original shape when it's rotted, and you do not have those things? And the Gemara leaves that question unanswered. Take you. Next, the Gemara brings a halacha of Ula bar Chanina, who says that a mace which is missing part of it does not have the halacha of rekev. It also doesn't have a halacha called tfusa, which is when you move the body, you have to take with it all the loose soil around it, because it may have liquid absorbed in it, as well as 3 fingers full of the hard soil that's around it. Also doesn't have the halacha of shchunas kvaros, that is, if you have a minimum number of mason together in one area, the entire area gets the halacha of a cemetery. Now, the Gemara asks a kash on this. We have a brisa that compares Aver min hachai to Aver min hameis, trying to learn a halacha from Aver min hameis, from Aver min hachai to Aver min from Aver min hameis to Aver min hachai. And the Gemara there asks a pircha that there are 3 chumras in Aver min hachai that you don't have in Aver min hameis. There are 3 chumras in Aver min hameis that you don't have in Aver min hachai. That is, and the 3 chumras are called Roiv, Roiva, and Mali Tarvat. Roiv is the halacha that it's mtame be'ohel if it is the majority of the height and the majority of the number of limbs of the mace. Roiva is the halacha that a Roiva kav of the bones is mtame be'ohel, and Tarvat is this halacha of rekev. So we're talking about Aver min hachai and Aver min hameis. So we're saying there is no Aver min hameis din rekev. There is no din rekev on Aver min hachai, but there obviously we're saying that when we're saying that there is a din rekev, we're saying there is a din rekev on Aver min hameis. But Aver min hameis does not have a din rekev according to what we just said. You don't have to have a full mace to have a din rekev. So the Gemara answer is no, that's not a kasha. What the Gemara just means is that in a mace you can never have a din rekev. And that's why Aver min hameis doesn't have the din rekev. Aver min hameis has no din. It is as follows. Aver min hachai can never have a din rekev because it's min hachai. Aver min hameis has the parsha of rekev. It happens not to because it's too small, but the concept of rekev has a parsha of, the concept of mace has a din of rekev in it. If there's a din of rekev anywhere in a mace, that is stricter than Aver min hachai, which has no such halacha. The Gemara now says there's a very similar exchange on a different halacha, which was said by Rava. Rava asked the question, what happens if a person has a limb that rots while he's alive, and then he dies? Is there a din of rekev on that? Do you say that the rekev has to be rekev which came after the death, or you need to have rekev of the dead? And here you have rekev of the dead. It just happens to be it wasn't in that order. First it was rekev, then it was dead, and instead of what it usually is first dead, then rekev. So Gemara says this was Rava's shaila. The Gemara wants to say you have an answer from our same discussion. We again compared Aver min hachai to Aver min hameis. We said there is a din rekev on Aver min hameis. There's no din rekev on Aver min hachai. Obviously, the only difference between the two is the fact that the Aver min hameis had died. So if you would take the Aver min hachai and then he dies, that would then become Aver min hameis. And there would be a din rekev. The only thing that keeps Aver min hachai from having the din mace, from having the din rekev, is the fact that he's not dead yet. But once he will be dead, it'll be Aver min hameis who will have it. So Mara says, no, again, we didn't say that this case of Aver has rekev. Aver min hachai has no din rekev. General, the concept of mace has a rekev, and therefore Aver min hachai has rekev. Aver min hameis has rekev. But to say that Aver min hachai has no rekev, therefore Aver min hameis has to have rekev, that we didn't say. We're just saying that the concept exists.